What's up, y'all? You're watching Vec. We just got a new installment of the yearly Formula 1 game in F1 2022. This game brought a few changes that I found interesting, and even some new additions that I've been looking forward to, including VR, and strangely enough, the addition of GT class vehicles. This is going to be a first impression since the game did just release, and I want to put in a few more hours into it before I give it a solid rating. But nonetheless, there's a few things to talk about. Also, if you want to see some live gameplay, hit the sub button as I do plan to stream this game and later release a follow-up to this video. While the game has stayed relatively the same through the years, a few things have been added and changed, including F1 Live, where you get to customize a living room of sorts for people to hang out in. You can even add your F1 cars inside that said living room and the GT cars as you unlock them. This only affects the look of the starting screen, it doesn't affect the actual game in any way, aside from having something to spend your points on. Let's talk about the new GT cars. These cars can be unlocked by getting tokens through challenges. So far, these only include vehicles like Mercedes, McLaren, Aston Martin, and Ferrari, which makes sense since these are manufacturers that are actively participating in F1. Unlocking these cars does come into play in some way, which we'll cover a bit later. Career-wise, it's more of the same. You can start a solo career as either a driver or my team option, and the addition of a two-player career from 2021 also makes a comeback, which is nice if you want to partner with a friend and dominate the competition. There's a small addition to career which I greatly appreciate. This is the option to either start a fresh F1 campaign or jump into the current Formula 1 season. This means that you can jump into the F1 game as the actual F1 season progresses, with the game matching the starts from the season as they happen. So far we have the choice of the first 9 races that have taken place so far, with the rest of the results being added in as the season goes on. I love this new addition as it makes me feel like I can be part of the real life F1 season, and I as a sim driver can affect the outcome of the race and my place in it. If you want to start your own GP season, that option is still there as well, with either the choice of creating your own ideal season with your favorite tracks, or copy the current F1 season. You should take caution when starting a race in a custom championship. If you don't change the on-track weather and start, the game loves to start you off with rain on soft tires, every single time. So make sure to change your weather and start, or at least plan to start on inners, cause it's gonna rain. Solo career brings the addition of GT style challenges. These are broken into speed zones, drift, rival, and autocross. These feel like the game's version of license challenges from Gran Turismo, and I can tell you, they're a lot of fun, and definitely worth the time to check out. I very much enjoyed the average speed zone challenge, as it lets you practice your driving by meeting a minimum section time. The rival challenge was also a lot of fun, as it gives a chance to practice defending and overtaking, with each attempt moving the rival closer to you. GT cars are also added to the time trial, which is really the only other reason to use the tokens to unlock the GT cars. Unlike the F1 or F2 options, you have to unlock the cars to use them in time trial. Though unlocking the cars isn't really that much of a pain. I seem to be getting tokens to unlock GT cars randomly, and I haven't even looked at the actual challenges to get the tokens to unlock them. So don't worry about targeting these, you'll naturally get tokens to unlock these cars. One cool option is the safety car, with both the Mercedes and the Aston Martin safety cars being options for the time trial. So if you ever wanted to drive the safety car around a given course, this is your chance to live out some of that dream. Now let's talk about the most important aspect of the game, the driving. This is a racing game after all. The cars feel drastically different from 2021, as they should. These are brand new cars with a brand new set of regulations, and the reintroduction of ground effects, and the cars feel like it. The driving is more akin to a high downforce LMP car, which I love. You're able to carry a lot more speed into a corner than before. Ground effects definitely feel like they come into play more as you increase speed. At low speeds, you feel a loss of downforce, resulting in a more increased risk of losing grip. Which brings me to race starts. If you're like me and like to use manual starts, the game defaults to using the right paddle shift of wheel as a hand clutch. I don't know if this was a feature in the past games, but even with dated wheels like the G920, this is an immersive way to do starts. That being said, they're incredibly difficult. Be prepared to practice your race starts because they are punishing. I could barely touch the throttle, and getting into the ideal rev range felt next to impossible. At lights out, even just a bit of throttle could result in a massive wheel spin in a 1-to-1 session with the barrier. Even if you do get it somewhat right, the other cars take off, resulting in a loss of position quickly. It took me a few tries to really get into the groove, and even then, I felt like I didn't quite have it down. Driving with a wheel is pretty bad right now. There is nearly no sense of force, and oftentimes the wheel's feedback is limp, taking a few seconds to kick in. I had to fiddle with my settings for a bit and even triple some of the effects to even feel some sense of force feedback through my wheel. There's also some effects that tend to be extreme, such as understeer and when hitting a barrier. For my Logitech wheel, this wasn't too bad as the Newton meters aren't high, but for those driving with something like a direct drive wheel, you want to turn the force down to about 5 to 8 Newton meters, since these drastic effects can come seemingly out of nowhere and can cause some serious injury. I'm hoping EA or Cody's fixes this soon. I do feel like I need to mention that this all changes when driving the GT cars. These simply feel amazing on a wheel, with the force feedback and the drivability of the cars feeling exactly how I expect them to feel. The cars feel weighty and responsive, but not on rails, with body roll seemingly being a factor. If we got this sort of feel from a real FIA GT game like an IMSA series, this would really excite me and quickly get my attention. I really love what they did with the feel of the GT cars. Turn 10, take note for motorsport, since you do have that little Game Pass relation with EA. I haven't had this much fun driving a GT class car since I first booted up ACC. While I'm not a controller user for F1 games, I decided to give it a try just for impression's sake, and in my own personal thoughts, it was one of the worst experiences. The car feels like it weighs as much as an elephant and has a turning radius of a boat. I couldn't drive to save my life, and putting in a decent lap was a feat. Again, I just don't use a controller for this game, but for those that do, let me know in the comments what you think. So definitely take my impression of using a controller with this game with a huge grain of salt. Now let's talk about visuals. The game is an improvement over its predecessor in some ways, but in others it falls short. Specifically talking about graininess and pixelization, it seems that the game renders lower res objects at a distance and even some pieces of clothing to make bigger objects which are closer look prettier by rendering those at a higher res. While this isn't game breaking or game changing, it does take you out of the game a bit. The weather effects, however, are pretty neat, with changing weather being noticeable on track as the race progresses. Fog and lighting also looked awesome on tracks like Bahrain. NPCs aren't much of a change, they're still the same copy-paste fans in the stands, and for some reason, the same woman with a Karen-style haircut in every garage. Just that one, over and over with no change. Come on EA Codys, you got at least 3 different styles of guys. You can do more than just the one woman with a Karen look. Do more please. Now onto my final point, which is the addition of VR. I would have loved to have given you VR footage, but that just didn't happen as I couldn't sit with a headset for enough time to get some decent footage. VR is atrocious. It feels like a late addition to the game. It's severely unoptimized and struggles at any setting. There were constant hangs and frame drops and struggled the most in any area with a lot of lights or lighting effects. There was also the issue of focus. Everything looked blurry at a distance, making me feel like I was nearsighted, and it was also difficult to focus on a single object. And for a racing game where you need to look towards your apex, which will be at a distance, this makes VR hard to use. It feels a lot like the VR is forcing you to focus on 2 different objects. They couldn't have done VR worse, and it needs a lot of work, which is sad since this was one of the most requested features. I really hope they do a lot of work with it to make it usable soon. It is still early days and I'm sure many fixes are coming soon, including some much needed optimization. I'm still enjoying this game, especially the GT challenges. I do like the feel of the Formula 1 cars when a wheel actually works, and especially the GT cars. Once wheel force feedback is fixed, this can easily be one of my favorites in the series. It's just too bad for the state of the VR in the present time. Hopefully this video helped out if you were considering buying the game or waiting until it's patched up a bit. If you're on the fence, maybe wait a week or so for some patches. Otherwise, I do think it's worth picking up. Thanks for watching. There's more F1 content to come in the near future, so hit that like button, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment below on what you think of the game so far. Take care of yourselves and of each other, and as always, have a good one.